I don't know how much longer we'll be here. Of course, we're back underway today. We had looked at going to a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday type of schedule a few weeks ago, but then when we were needed to take 2 weeks off to focus solely on the budget, we're probably going to get away from that and start going 4 days a week for legislative days, and of course 5 or 6 days a week for being down here. So I think we'll probably pick up pace here for the next couple of weeks. Uh, we have been working very closely with the House, and I'd like to report that the conversations have been very positive. Unlike years in the past, we all have an agreement on what the issue is, kind of the amount of money that we're looking for saving, and a commitment to making that through spending reductions. My understanding is that the February numbers aren't going to look that great, which is another problem for us, and really impacts what I guess we're going to do for the remainder of fiscal year 2010. So the cooperation with the House has been fantastic, unlike anything I've seen in the 8 years I've been here, and we'll continue to work with them. But the budget problem does not seem to be getting better. And again, as I said a couple of weeks ago, there are going to be cuts that are made that they're not very popular, and people, I think, are now getting the full picture of just how serious this is, and we're taking it as a very serious issue. And I think the legislature, this 2 weeks has been a great learning process for legislators, and that I think everyone is on the same page now that these are very serious times, and we are going to make serious cuts that we have not seen before. So with that, I'll be happy to open up to any questions.
Mr. Rogers, in about 20 minutes, there's going to be a news conference. So people again pushing for a $1 cigarette tax increase.
Right.
It could raise $354 million. Certainly, the tobacco industry is not the only opponent of this. What is your feeling on whether that stands a chance this year, or whether it should be considered?
Well, I'm sure some people are considering it, but the budget writers that are members of the Appropriations Committee that I've spoken to are focused on spending reductions, not additional revenues. So, and I would quibble somewhat with the numbers. I think you can look at what a dollar mathematically may or may not raise. I think sometimes you need to look past that and understand what the economic impact would be, particularly to our border cities. If you go down and ask those who in the small stores, convenience stores on the Florida border, what has happened to not their cigarette sales, but their overall sales, what has been the economic impact of them raising the cigarette tax more than $1? They'll tell you it wasn't that positive. In fact, the Georgia convenience stores on the border with Florida have seen a great increase. So I think when looking at this, you really need to look at it from a dynamic perspective. Some people will throw out that number, $350 million. I'm not sure that's completely accurate. But that has not been our focus as to the raising revenue side. We are still looking at spending reductions.
Chip, in terms of the cut our way out of this versus finding new sources of revenue equation, given the fact that we're looking at a structural deficit that could go into 2011, 2012, is there any way that cuts alone will get us out of this?
Well, one of the things we are looking at and have been working closely with the House on is adjusting fees to make sure that fees cover costs. And even among my most conservative friends, which I have many, there's an understanding that if you're going to avail yourself of some sort of government service, that you ought to at least pay the cost of providing that service. And so many of our fees have not been updated for 20 and 30 years. So I think that's one area where we're trying to at least make government work the way it ought to work. Sometimes people talk about running government as a business. Well, no one sells their product and service for less than what it costs them, except government. So we hope to fix that and at least have these fees cover the cost of providing the good or service.
But will raising fees by itself be enough combined with cuts?
Absolutely not. I mean, somebody very smart once said Georgia simply doesn't have a government we can afford. And we have to recognize that from this point forward, there will be major structural changes on the way the government is going to be funded in the state, and how much government is going to be funded. But again, the ultimate answer is one thing, and I've been saying this for 2 years. The only way to solve this is to grow the economy. So when we take stopgap measures, sometimes referred to as revenue enhancements, that doesn't help grow the economy. That may get you past a year or two, but over the long term, it does more damage than good. We have to grow Georgia's economy. We need to have this budget growing, not declining by 5 and 6, 7% a year. And when we do that, so many of these problems are solved. So, I caution all of my colleagues to remember that when we're looking at policies that affect the overall economy of the state of Georgia, those policies need to be one focused on growth and not one that is just a short-term stopgap measure.
Since you spoke about massive layoffs in state government, there were, at that time, a lot of questions about just what you could or couldn't do in terms of offering deals for people to retire early and that sort of thing. If you had more time to research this, and you still think that there will be that size reduction in state government?
We are still looking at it. We are, I believe, getting closer, and I can't speak to the specifics, but we are getting closer on figuring out a way to encourage people who are already at retirement age or eligible for early retirement to look at that as a serious option. And we think through doing that, continuing the state hiring freeze, that we will have those workforce numbers come down to where we need those to be. Is it going to be a magical 5,000 number? Probably not, but again, that's one of the structural changes that we have to look at that Dennis spoke of. I mean, we need fewer government employees, particularly at the state level going forward, because that is a year after year after year structural change that impacts the budget in a positive way.
I'm sorry, are you saying that early retirements plus a hiring freeze would be enough to balance the budget without serious layoffs?
No, I don't think that, a early retirements plus a hiring freeze will not balance the budget.
Okay, I thought that's what you just said.
The reduction in workforce is part of a whole package of things that includes mainly overall spending reductions. But when we talk about spending reductions, we're not looking simply as a reduction in workforce as the only spending reduction. There are dozens and dozens of others. So that's part of an entire plan. You can't get to a balanced budget simply by reducing workforce.
But I think his question was, can you avoid layoffs of people who don't want to be laid off by early retirements and not filling vacancies?
I don't know the answer to that because we haven't finalized on what cuts will have to be made. So, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to get to a decision of a trade-off, and that is additional cuts in a certain area or layoffs beyond a hiring freeze and early retirement. So, to answer your question directly, it's still an option, but that decision has not been made.
It looks like, just to balance this year, we might have to use up the stimulus money we had budgeted for 2011, just to meet the budget for this year. Is there a worry of what will happen then for next year's budget? I mean, will there really, because, the stimulus needs to come from, that's the only money we got to play with because the rainy day is at, almost
Zero,
gone.
yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I think the governor has, but you'd better, you might want to ask him. I think he's planning to move some money, but certainly not all stimulus revenue that was scheduled for fiscal year 11 into fiscal year 2010. But as you said, the rainy day fund, which was built up to about $1.8 billion just 2 years ago, is down to zero. So there is no room for error, and the state has to pay its bills. So at the end of the day, if we have to move some money from fiscal year 2011 into 10 to meet those requirements, we're going to have to do it. And then we'll have to deal with the fallout for fiscal year 2011. But again, getting back to the structural changes, fiscal year 2012 is where, as of now, there is no stimulus money, and we don't anticipate there'll be any more stimulus money coming. And that's where you have to have a different-looking government in the state of Georgia.
do you think, this being an election year, that next session, if we at this point, it'd be even easier for lawmakers to go maybe for a cigarette tax, or maybe find something somewhere to plug that hole, or will we just keep cutting?
That question of differing behavior during an election year comes up a lot. I have not seen that among my caucus members, that they are changing their behavior based on an election year. When you run in a 2-year cycle, I'm not sure that you ever really can make a great discernment between election year and non-election year. So the decisions that are difficult to make today are going to be very difficult to make next year as well.
Senator, is there a tobacco tax number that is more palatable than $1? I mean, is it simply a philosophical resistance to raising that or any tax? Or is it a matter of just $1 is too high? Why don't we hear anybody say a 25-cent tax or 35 or a 50-cent tax?
I think the dollar figure was really developed more maybe along marketing lines. I used to be in marketing, and $1 sure sounds better than 62 cents. So maybe that was it. And somebody has used the term "pass the buck," and of course you can't do that if it's 74 cents. You can't say "pass the 74 cents." So I think that maybe that's where it came from. But